30 seconds, 30 seconds. Four, three, two, one. Game over.
If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. Very good. Thank you so much. So as you were going around the room, were there, first of all, was there anyone that was able to get everyone to get all of your circles signed? Please raise your hand if you're able to get all your circles signed. Oh, sweet. Was there anyone that actually was not able to get anyone to sign anything on their paper? All right, so we all have signatures on our paper. Did you see things on someone else's paper and you said, man, why didn't I think of that? That was a good idea. And I have 3 of those things. Yes, in the back. Help. So you saw that on someone else's paper and said, I should have thought about that. Let me have someone from over here. Community. You saw that on someone else's paper and said, that's a great idea. And I saw a hand over here. Humor. You saw that and said, man, that was a really good idea. All right? Cool. Were there also things that were either difficult to find someone to sign on, or you actually did not find someone to sign on? You have 3 of those things. Yes. Books. Please raise your hand if you value books, even if it wasn't written on your paper. All right? Cool. 2 more. Yes. Ecuador. If you value traveling or going to other exotic places like Ecuador, please raise your hand if traveling is important to you. All right, great. Yes. Quiet. If being quiet and they got their hands up already. Please raise your hand if quiet is important to you, even if it wasn't written on your paper. Great.
Andre?
Yes.
Joel said he used to value sex.
There's one in every crowd. So, I I'm not going to repeat that. It was something about sex and not getting it anymore. Something, so I'm not going to repeat that. Don't want that attributed to me repeating that thing. So what do you think is what's the object of this particular activity? Why would I start out a presentation with this activity? Common denominators. What about common denominators? That we all have some kind of common denominator, right? Raise your hand if you've been to a diversity training, sensitivity training, cultural competence training, sexual harassment training. Raise your hand in high. Okay. You are the people I have to fix. Because a lot of those trainings, they spend a great deal of time talking about the ways in which we're different. And I believe that those are only partially important. Because it's much more important to recognize the ways that we are similar. When I was growing up in the 90s, Sting or the Police, I can't remember which one, they had a song called I Hope the Russians Love Their Children Too. Does anybody remember that song? Yeah. Why did Sting or the Police, I can't remember which it was, why did they have the hope in the 80s and 90s that the Russians loved their children? Because they would not start a nuclear war if they loved their children. And so it's very obvious that they do love their children, especially Crimean children. But that's a whole other conversation with the whole annexing thing. But it's important that we understand that we have so much more in common that our differences actually become minuscule compared to the things that we have in common. All right? So, whether I am a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim, guess what I want for my kids? Or an agnostic, guess what I want for my children? I want the same thing. I want them to grow up happy and healthy and powerful people. And so the differences that we have become minuscule. I think Ronald Reagan said it best. He demonstrated it best in a speech to the UN, and he said, if aliens landed on the planet Earth, we would see how much more we have in common than we have differences. And so I will illustrate that even further with you. So on your when you look at those 5 areas, was there one that had something to do with your race or ethnicity? Did you write down anything associated with your race or ethnicity? If you did, you just wave your paper. Okay, so I don't see any papers being waved. All right? Those 5 things that you wrote down, the things that are important or of value to you, did any of those have anything to do with your gender or your gender identity? Okay, if you did, just wave your paper, so nobody did that. Okay, so for this one, what I want you to do is I want you to jump up and down and wave your hands in the air like you don't care if you can say yes to this next question. Did one of those 5 things that you wrote down have something to do with your prescribed social-economic status? All right? So I asked you to write down what? What did I ask you to write down? 5 things that you value or that are important to you. And so race did not come up. Gender did not come up. Socioeconomic status did not come up. Why? Because you're smart. You did exactly what I asked you to do. Was write down the things that are important to you, to me, to us. You see, because race and ethnicity and our religious background, our socioeconomic status, all those things are very important to other people. But they're not that important to us. Now, what I'm not saying is that my race isn't important. That is important. But I would say that my humanity is more important than my so-called race. You see, when I was born, I was not born black. I'm not going through a reverse Michael Jackson thing. You see, October 30th at 3:44 in the afternoon. My mom is in the stirrups. Those things are scary. And the doctor is there. And so the doctor pulls me out. And then, back in those days, they had a practice of slapping the baby. So the doctor slapped me, and I did what any self-respecting man would do. I slapped the doctor back. That's an old Richard Pryor joke, probably the only one I can tell. So the doctor hands me off to the nurse, and the nurse puts me on the scale. She starts taking my vitals, how long I am, how much I weigh, all this kind of stuff. And then she gets to the most important part of her checklist that impacts my life. And it was called the category of race. And so she looks down at me, and she looks at my parents, and she looks at her checklist. She looks at my parents, she looks down at me, and she looks down at her checklist. And in those days, there were 3 categories. Black, white, and other. And so she's looking at my parents, and she's looking at me, and she's looking at her list. She finally makes her decision. And what do you think she checked on her list? What do you think? Black, yeah. Right? So she checked black. Now, the thing that I think is very interesting is before she made a decision, what was I? Baby. I was a baby. I was a human being. And so I was born human, but America made me black. Because if I was born in Puerto Rico, I would be what? I'd be Puerto Rican or Hispanic black. Right? That's what's on the HR forms, right? Hispanic non-black, Hispanic white, Hispanic non-white, all that stuff, right? But here's the other thing. I also wonder what my life might have been like had she checked something else other than black. It'll be confusing for a whole lot of other people. Right? So the racial illogic doesn't define who we are. I think about the President of the United States, President Barack Hussein Obama. I think about him, right? Because he shows up in the world as what ethnic group or what racial group? He shows up as a black man. Is that the sum total of his ethnic identity? No. She's like, no, I know him. No, it's not, right? So his father was a black man from Kenya. His mother was a white woman from Kansas. They got together and they Obama'd. And so as much as he is black, he is also biracial or mixed race. And if we follow the sickness of the racial illogic, as much as he is black, he is also biracial, which also means that he is just as much white. So he could say that he is a white man as much as he could say he's biracial or that he is black. But how would people respond to the President of the United States walking around saying that he is a white man? It's hard enough for some people to believe that he was even born. Nonetheless, that is. And so, when we talk about this concept of poverty, one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is that being poor robs people of or gives the illusion to rob people of their humanity. And so, first and foremost, we are revivers or reminders of people's humanity. All right? So let's get going. I guess if you point it towards the thing, that works a little better. Let's go back. Okay, I guess we'll do this. I just just want to talk about some human truths really quick and then get into the rest of this. One, and you'll see these in your handout as well. One of the truths is that human beings can learn, change, and grow. Who I am today is not who I was at 17. Thank God. I don't know if you've known a 17-year-old. And the interesting thing about this is that once I understand that human beings can learn, change, and grow, I can hold hope for them in the face of not seeing those things. Right? So there were some behaviors that I had as a 17-year-old, and you know, the adults in my life were like, he will never change. But I did change. I do my own dishes now. Even if I have to buy them each week from Target. People do what they think works even when what? Even when it doesn't work. And why do they do things when it doesn't work? Why do they continue to do that?
They don't know what else to do.
Because they don't know what else to do. What else?
Habit.
Habit. Why does it become a habit?
We always did it that way.
Well, we've always done it that way. And why have we always done it that way?
Mom and Dad did that.
Because Mom and Dad did it that way. But why did Mom and Dad do it that way? Because it worked at some point. Have you ever seen a kid kind of just have a meltdown in the store, right? And then throwing a tantrum because they want the, you know, G.I. Joe with the action kung fu grip? Okay, I only got 4 laughs from that one. I'm getting old. And so why is that the kid's first time having that meltdown? Probably not, right? And why are they doing it? Because it worked at some point. It may not be working this particular time, but they know that if I keep doing this, I'm going to eventually get what I want because my parents are weak and tired. So people do what they think works even when it doesn't work, and they do it because it's been successful in the past. Which means that kid who's falling out for that breakfast cereal will continue to use that behavior, even if he's 35. And when will he change his behavior? But it's already not working.
When he finds something that works.
When he finds something that works, or when he realizes that this behavior doesn't work. And I'm sure you know some adults who are still throwing temper tantrums because they haven't figured out that it works. And for those who keep doing it, if we allow them to keep thinking that it works, they're not going to change either. Next, all human behavior is goal-directed. People are always trying to achieve something through their behavior. I am not a cynic. I like to think that I'm a realist. I don't necessarily believe in purely altruistic behaviors, that people just do stuff for other people just because it's a good thing to do. I think people typically do altruistic things because they get something out of it, even if it's something that's intrinsic, right? Something that they feel on the inside. No. That was not fun, so we'll come back to that in just a second. The next is that attitude is a reaction to a goal. An attitude is a reaction to a goal. What have you been taught about what an attitude is? Anyone ever been accused of having an attitude? Anybody got an attitude right now? What is an attitude? It's an expression, okay? Attitude. It's a thought process. Attitude.
Manifestation of a thought process.
It's a manifestation of a thought process.
Attitude of frustration.
It's an attitude of frustration.
An act of frustration.
It's an act of frustration. Very good answers. But inadequate for my parents. You see, my parents were raised by folks that we call old school, right? So their parents were old school. And so my parents went to college and they said, you know what, we want to raise our kids differently than how we were raised. And so since they had psychology classes and sociology classes, they said we're going to use psychology to really mold and shape our kids in better ways than how we were molded and shaped. And so my parents would do that. And when that didn't work, they went back to what they knew, which was yelling and screaming. And my parents would say goofy stuff. Like, my dad would, first of all, I thought my name was Boy for the first 10 years of my life. And my dad would say, Boy, you better fix your face. And so I go, and he sent me to my room because that's not what he was talking about in terms of changing my attitude. Or my mother would just go, she'd go straight to it and she'd say, Boy, you better go to your room till you get your act together. So I'd go to my room, I'd get my act together, I'd step into the hallway, and I'd say, to be or not to be. I spent a lot of time in my room. Because that's not what they were talking about in terms of changing my attitude. But I did get it. I'm somewhat of a late bloomer. So when I was 17, I finally got what they were talking about. And so my father was my pastor. And so on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So Sunday, church all day. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car because my dad loves me. What does he say? He says, yes, he loves me. So I get the keys to the car. I'm hanging out with my friends. I fill the car up with gas. I come home before curfew. And my father says I have what kind of an attitude? A good or a positive attitude. What do I say about my dad's attitude? It's good as well, right? So it's good as well. So Friday night, we're cool. Sunday, my best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church. All day. But I'm 17. I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? What does my dad say? Not only does he say no, but he gives me a sermon about how I'm leading people to hell. In my household, the worst consequence of anything was that you were going to hell. You didn't do the dishes, going to hell. You didn't make the bed, going to hell. You didn't cut the grass, going to hell. And either you could go to hell on your own, or he would show you the way. So as a part of that interaction, what would I say about my father's attitude? That he has a poor or a bad attitude. What would he then say about my attitude? That it is also a bad attitude or a negative attitude. And so Friday night we're cool. Sunday we have a problem. What defines an attitude? Circumstances? Perception? Reaction? Okay, let's bring it home. How many people have a teenager in your life? All right, cool. Has a situation ever come at you like this? Where the teenager is seeking something from you. And so that the teenager says, oh dear, kind, gracious adult, may I please go to Cindy Whitworth's party? And you're looking at this child, you're like, first of all, you don't ever talk to me like that, so what's up with that? And then you say to the child, you know what? You just got to seal your report card. Your room is a mess, and your brothers and sisters, you've been fighting with them all day. No, you can't go to Cindy's party. What happens to the child's attitude? It gets worse. They get a bad attitude. And so they storm off to their room. And it seems like they gain like 5,000 pounds. And you hear all this murmuring, no more English. So they go into their room and they're in there soaking and they close the door a little firmer than they should, like they really pay rent. If you're going to slam the door, you have to pay something. So they're in there for a while, and then you start thinking about it. You're like, you know what? We've talked about the grade thing. We've already talked about, the work with their brothers and sisters, and we can get that room cleaned up afterwards. So you go to the door, you knock on the dungeon door, and the gargoyle dragon monster thing with the steam coming from under the door says, "What do you want?" And you say, "You know what? I was just thinking, you can't go to Cindy's party. You can't stay for the whole thing. I'll leave you there for about an hour. I'll drop you off. I'll pick you an hour and a half. I'll drop you off, pick you up, and then we'll do some other errands and that kind of stuff." What does the child then say? What happens to the child? The attitude changes, right? Well, and at least the young people that I've worked with would rather go for a little while than not go at all, right? And so their attitude changes. So what is the demarcation of an attitude? Or what? How does one know that one has an attitude? Or what sets the tone for an attitude? When you get what you want, how do you feel? When you don't get what you want, how do you feel? So what creates an attitude? What defines an attitude? If you get what you want, how do you feel? If you don't get what you want, how do you feel? What determines an attitude? Getting what you want. And so when we have clients who have a bad attitude, what do we know about them for sure? They're not getting what they want. And so as helpers, we have a two-part responsibility to them. One, what's the easiest way to help someone have a good attitude? Give them what they want. But what if giving them what they want isn't possible? It's not something that I can do. It's not a part of, what we can. And even if I can give it to them, they wouldn't be able to do a good job with it anyway. Then what becomes my responsibility? Give them the bad news, and so that helps them have a good attitude. Teaching them what?
What would be better?
Teaching them what would be better. Compromise. I will tell you, compromise is the devil. No, and the reason I say that, because a lot of people say that, because they teach us, and they say, compromise is good. Right? Well, what's the basis of compromise? You both feel like you gave up the same thing. It's a compromise, right? So I'm going to give up this, and you're going to give up that. And that only works when we think that is equal. But if I feel like I gave up more than you gave up, we got a problem. It's called divorce. But keep going. Right? So as a helper, my responsibility to help someone have a good or better attitude, my responsibility to them is to have them find a new goal, for them to create a new goal for themselves. All right? That becomes my responsibility to them. All right? So let's move on to talking about the goals. And so there are three goals that all human beings are striving for. Three goals that all human beings are striving for. Three goals that all human beings are striving for. They are striving for significance, belonging, and safety. Significance, belonging, and safety. When I was the affirmative action officer at Anoka County, a lot of people would come and as we were doing either community forums or working with the staff, people would say, "Andre, why are those Hmong people moving into my neighborhood?" And I would say the same reason you moved into your neighborhood. They are looking for safety, significance, and belonging. Right? So, significance says that I am a person with purpose and power and that I can create things. That I'm a creator. I can make things happen. And it's so funny. When I would work with my middle school students, and I have one or two that would have quote-unquote low self-esteem. And, they'd say, "I'm a loser, I can't do anything, blah, blah, blah." And I would remind them that you are a winner. You are one in a million. When we think about all the matter that left your father's body and met your mother's egg, and you are the one. And if you've been a winner once, you can be a winner again and again. So significance. People are looking for significance. They're also looking for a sense of belonging. Being in relationship with people who understand my significance. Whether I am able to find that significance or if I determine that significance, I want to be in a relationship with people who understand that significance. And lastly, I want to be physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually safe to express those first two states of being with other people. So I'm looking for that sense of safety. Correct? So I'm looking for that sense of safety. And one of those ways that, particularly in the United States, that we've said that we want to make sure, guarantee that people have these three goals or are able to reach these three goals is that we have created this document that is the core of our existence in the United States. And what is that document called? Starts with con and institution. The Constitution. Please raise your hand if you read the Constitution since 8th grade. All right. The rest of us have homework to do. Because I will tell you that if you don't understand what the Constitution says, that there are enemies of the kind of work that we do that do understand. And so although we may have a lot of heart, they've got some core weapons that are also at our disposal. And so we need to use and select our choice of weapons. Right? So the preamble of the Constitution simply says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The Declaration of Independence, paragraph 2. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. His truth is marching. Anybody else feeling that? Those words are powerful words. And they're not just words. And it's so funny because people will come to me and they say, Andre, when they wrote those words, they weren't talking about people who look like you. And what I say to that is, if they did not want me to hold them to that, they should have never written it down, and they never should allow me to learn how to read. Because I'm going to hold America to the promises of our great document. And so, as we talk about this, and we talk about this 50 years of fighting poverty. Thank you so much for working on that. I'll get in just a second. As we think about those things, it's extremely important that we recognize that we've been making small steps, but we need to continually make small steps. So, in 1863, what happened in 1863? The Emancipation Proclamation. And what did the Emancipation Proclamation do?
Freed the slaves in the South.
Free the slaves. Free the slaves. Free the slaves. What is a slave?
A person who has no rights.
A person that has no rights. What is a slave? Someone who works against their will. What is a slave? A slave is property. Was it property that was kidnapped from their homeland, forced to work from sunup to sundown picking cotton or rolling tobacco? Was it property that was doing that? No, they were humans. They were people with dreams and aspirations and hopes and loves and who faced life and death, who wanted relationships and families and were denied that because of the system, that economic system called slavery. And so no longer can you walk out of this room and say that it was slaves that were freed by the emancipation. It was people in the system of slavery that were freed. People first language, right? People first. So, in 1920, what happens? What happens in 1920? Women get the opportunity to help declare their own existence. So they have the right to vote, to participate in our democracy. 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act is signed, giving Native Americans the right to be American citizens. Pause for the irony. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed, and what did the Civil Rights Act do? What about segregation? It ended segregation. And it also defined discrimination. So it ended segregation, the policy that said separate but equal. It ended the system of Jim Crow or American version of apartheid. It ended that, and it also defined discrimination. 1964. 1978, the Native American Freedom of Religion Act is signed, saying that Native Americans can now, in 1978, practice their religion how they want. Double irony. In a country formed on so-called religious freedoms, right? In 1990s, the Americans with Disabilities Act is signed, giving what to whom? Giving what to whom?
Equal access.
Giving equal access to goods, jobs, services, and money to people with disabilities. People with disabilities. People with disabilities. People first. Now, I find there's some ironic things that I find here as we talk about this, the system. I find it interesting that in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation is signed, but it's not until 1964 that those people who were released out of bondage get equal access to goods, jobs, services, and money. I find that interesting. How long of a period of time is that? It's 101 years. 101 years. So let's open up our handout. Just want to check the time because I'm going to give you a break as well. So one of the things that I recognize is that so when I taught middle school and high school, I wanted to make sure that I got clear concepts to my students. So sometimes I make things really simple. So pardon me if that's just how I've kind of been rewired, right? So if it seems overly simple, please look at the universal truths of what I'm saying as opposed to the application specifically. And so one of the things that I recognize is the human soul is made up of two parts. It is the body and it is the spirit. The body and the spirit. And one of the things that I also recognized was that when my grandmother passed, we have this tradition in our family that we put our grandmother in this really pretty box. And it's got gold lame and pearls and all sorts of these gold knobs and handles on it. And they open up the box so that people can see what she looks like in this expensive box. Right? So she's laying there. And so people come by and they give their last respects to my grandmother, which is I find very interesting because her body is there, but nobody's home. And so when the body is without the spirit, the body becomes a thing. And it's easy to look at things as opposed to looking at the whole person. But then afterwards, we would have a thing called the repast dinner. And so at her repast dinner was really interesting because everybody brought spaghetti. It was like 14 different types of spaghetti. I didn't know you could make spaghetti that many different ways, right? And so we're sitting there, we're laughing, we're joking about my grandmother, we're sharing pictures, and all of a sudden, it kind of feels like my grandmother is with us. And she kind of is. But her spirit is powerless. It has less power because it's not in her body. And so when the body and the spirit are connected, we have the human soul. And what I'd like to suggest is that poverty does a remarkable job of making people think that they're not completely human. And so what I'd like to do is just take a 5-minute break, 7-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish the rest of this, all right? So I'll see you back in 7 minutes. Thanks.
Thank
Just a couple more minutes. If you can usher friends and neighbors into the room, we'll get started. Don't forget to sign up for the auction pieces. So there's things in the hallway. There's also things in the back as part of the auction. So great stuff out there.
So unusual to be loved by anyone. So unusual to be loved by anyone. You lost that love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling.
Am I the only person who knows that song?
You lost that love and feeling now.
Now I feel like a Grease song. I feel like we should break into Grease, you know, or even better than that, a good Meatloaf song. Anyone like Meatloaf? Do you love me, baby? That's how it goes, right? Yeah, by the National Life, right? Okay. What's that? It's 8 minutes long. It's almost as long as Freebird. Freebird! All right. So it looks like most folks are here, so I appreciate that. And so in the last little while that we have, I should put on my microphone, huh? Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. So in the last little while that we have, what I'd like to do is pick up the pace a little bit and do a few interactive activities and have some conversations among yourselves as it relates to kind of what we've been talking about. One thing I will share with you is that it is important that each and every one of us. So, can anyone tell me what happened on April 4th? 1968. What happened April 4th, 1968? The assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And that is profound for a number of reasons. One is that he was somewhat of a moral compass for us in terms of teaching us how we can be different than how we were. And what superpower did he have? Did he have a superpower? No. Did he wear a special uniform that gave him the ability to be different from the rest of us? Did he have a special cereal? Was there a diet that Dr. King had that made him so much more unique than the rest of us? Is Dr. King coming back to rescue us from our moral peril? No, he's not. Is Gandhi coming back to teach us a different path of being? Is Gandhi coming back to do that? No, he's not. Is Mother Teresa coming back to teach us about compassion and how to give to others as a way to solidify who we are? Is she coming back to do that? No. Is Nelson Mandela going to teach us, come back to teach us about how to work with people who consider themselves our enemies? Is he coming back to do that? I would argue that they are not coming back to do that. And that no one will come and do that unless that someone is us. Did you know you are someone's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? You are someone's Mother Teresa. You can be someone's Nelson Mandela. You can be someone's John Brown, who was a white man who fought for abolition and gave his life for the fight for abolition. You can be someone's John Wesley, who in England stood up against Parliament and said that slavery was morally and should be illegally outlawed in England. You can be that person for someone. But typically we are not that person because we are hiding behind our shame and our embarrassment. How many times have you seen a situation go down in front of you, or you heard someone give a side comment, and you know that that situation was wrong, or that side comment was inappropriate, and that was also wrong? How many people have heard those things before, or been in those situations? This next part, don't answer this out loud, but I want you to answer it in your head. It's a rhetorical question, so just keep it to yourself. But how many times have you seen that and you've actually not said anything? See, part of what we've been conditioned to do is that they've conditioned us to be divided so that they can conquer. Divided and conquered. And we end up with these obstacle illusions. Obstacle illusions, barriers to recognizing our humanity. Obstacle illusions. And so one of those obstacle illusions is race. Another is gender, socioeconomic status. And so I want to talk a little bit about those so we can talk about how do we pierce those obstacle illusions so that we don't keep people bound because we won't speak up. And so the first is historical trauma, that is one of those obstacle illusions. And anyone familiar with that concept of historical trauma? All right? So what are the tenets, or what does that mean, historical trauma? Marco! So what does that mean, historical trauma? So things that have been passed down from previous generations, like hurt or ways of thinking, and that continue to be passed down. How many people have had a car stolen from you? Anyone had a car stolen? Okay. What was the kind of car?
Green Stratus.
It was a green Stratus. So if you saw your green Stratus, would you know that was your car?
Yes.
Yes, you would. All right, cool. So can I use your green Stratus for the story? All right? Historical trauma. Particularly as it pertains to Native Americans. So your green Stratus, you go to work and you come home, you park your Stratus in your parking space. You wake up the next morning, Tuesday morning, the Stratus is gone. What assumption do you make? That someone stole your Stratus. So what do you do when you discover that the Stratus is not there? So you call the police. And I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but anytime I call the police, they come, they take a report, and then they go back to doing what they were doing before. I always thought they should come with a CSI kit. Take down some tire tracks, measure some pictures, something. The crime has been committed. But they take a report, and then they go back to what they're doing, and they leave you with this little card. Right? So, let's say you come home Wednesday night, and you see that your green Stratus is in your neighbor's parking space. What do? So you visit your neighbor, right? And when you visit your neighbor, what do you say? You say, neighbor, that's my car. And the neighbor says, no, it's my car. And you say, I bought it. And they say, I got it. Thank you. So you might have a confrontation with your neighbor. You might even try to go and steal your car back. But they have these two giant Rottweiler shark tiger mixed dogs. So you're like, I'll come back later, right? And so finally, a couple of weeks go past, and you say, gosh darn it, I'm fed up with this. So you get your paperwork, you take them to court. So you got the police report, you got the insurance, you got all your car changes, you got your title, you got everything. And you stand there and you give it to the judge, and the judge looks at it very carefully and pieces through each piece of that and looks at it. And then the judge says, neighbor, what do you have? And the neighbor says, I don't have anything, sir. It's just my car. And so the judge goes, And so he looks at all your stuff, and he looks at the neighbor, and he looks at all your stuff, and then he makes his decision, and he says, the car goes to the neighbor. Wait a minute. How are you feeling about this justice system? Was it helpful that the police came to take a report? So that the police aren't helpful. The justice system isn't helpful. So now you go back home and the neighbor has your car and you're watching them drive your car to and fro, and then the neighborhood decides that they want to do a car show for leukemia. They want to raise money for leukemia. And so the neighborhood is going to do this. So the neighbor comes over to you and says, I know you know something about Dodge Green Stratuses. Could you help me prepare this car for the car show? What do you say to your neighbor that you can say out loud? Are you excited to be a part of this thing that's actually for a good cause? Are you excited to be a part of the car show? No. What emotional state do you have about the fact that you can see your neighbor driving around with your car, but there's nothing you can do about it? Do you feel happy about that? No. Are you encouraged to be a productive member of that community, given that this dude is driving or lady is riding around in your car?
I have a bit of an attitude.
Right? You would have a bit of an attitude. Right? Historical trauma for Native Americans. Can you imagine living a life, generation after generation after generation, seeing other people enjoy your stuff, and you not be able to do anything? And then those same people say to you, you know what? You can use the car on Saturday from 10 to 10:30, but don't be late. And so we tell Native Americans where they can hunt and fish and how much and where and what kind of things they can do with their land. And then we wonder why tobacco is a problem. We wonder why suicide is a problem. We wonder why alcohol is a problem. And because of that internalized sense of oppression, I can't fight the system because we've done that and we see what happens. And I'd rather take myself out than to let this wicked system take me out. And so we have to install hope and provide hope for our Native Americans and brothers and sisters. And even the word historical trauma gives the impression that those are things that have happened in the past, when in fact those are things that are happening every day in the lives of Native Americans, particularly those folks who find themselves in the res, which is one of those hot spots for poverty interventions. Right? The next is institutional racism. And institutional racism is simply this, and I give it just the simple definition, that between 1863 and 1964, there's 101 years. And I would suggest that during that dark age, pun intended, that dark age of American history, any institution that was developed in that 101 years is a racist institution. That it is racist. Because not everybody had equal opportunity to goods, jobs, services, and money at that 101 years. And we did some wonderful things. We added 22 states to the Union in that 101 years. The Model T Ford was invented in that 120 years. That 101 years. In that 101 years, we fought 2 world wars. Electricity became something that was in people's homes. And all throughout that 101 years, not everybody had equal access to all of those great things that were happening in our country. Next, the idea of poverty is problematic. And we'll work on we'll do a poverty simulation in just a bit. But poverty is problematic because poverty makes people think they're not as human as other people. Or it tries to create a hierarchy of humanity. What is one thing that is true about all human beings? We will die. It's true. Unless you're a vampire. Or a zombie, walking dead, because they're already dead. All right. And lastly, a barrier, an obstacle illusion, is this concept of whiteness. And whiteness is problematic. Because whiteness hangs on one thin spider web of belief. Does anybody know what that is? What holds whiteness together? What makes whiteness work? All right, so let's do this. Please raise your hand if your people group are from Sweden. It doesn't matter how far, but you can go back as far as you okay. German. All right. Finnish. All right. Norwegians. They always do not want to be left out. They never want to be left out. All right. Let's see. What's the Italian? Yeah, Italian. Which I think is funny because Italy is closer to Africa than it is to Europe, but I'm not saying that. Right? What would we consider those groups to be white? Yeah, in HR forms they consider those folks to be white. So what do Italians and Norwegians and Swedes and Germans, do they look alike? No, they don't, right? Or even Irish, right? The Irish, they don't look alike. But we all call those groups white. So what does whiteness, what's the thin thread that sews this concept of whiteness together? That our skin color makes us the same. When in fact, it does not. All white people are not equal in their whiteness. Listen to white people talk about other white people who don't measure up to the level of sophistication that most white people think they should. What do white people call white people who don't measure up? They call them white trash. What else do they call them? They call them what? Hillbillies. Call them rednecks. People make a whole career off of rednecks, right? And so that concept of whiteness as being equal is problematic. Here's another example, and I'll give it to you right now. So you have 4 squares on your paper, right? So the first square, what I'd like you to do is I want you to identify your racial group. However you would determine your racial group. What's your racial group? In square 1. HR version, your version, whatever, however you define it. The second square, what I'd like you to do is I want you to write down one thing you like about being your race. One thing you like about being your race. And this is in the center of your handout. I want you, in the third square, I want you to write down one thing that embarrasses you about your race or your racial group. Is there anything that embarrasses you about your race or your racial group? And in the fourth square, I want you to write down, what do you want people to know, or what might surprise people to know about your racial or ethnic group? What do you want people to know, or what might be surprising to people about your racial or ethnic group? So the first is, what is your race or your ethnic group? 2 is, what do you like about being your race or your ethnic group? Third is, what is embarrassing about your race or your ethnic group? And thirdly, what do you want people to know, or what might be surprising to people about your racial or ethnic group?
The first one again, please.
Yep, the first one is, what is your racial or ethnic group? So how would you define yourself? All right? What I'd like you to do now is I want to give you about 3 minutes to talk at your table about those 4 questions. Talk at your table about those 4 questions. Four, three, two, one. Thoughts? So what came up for folks as you were having conversations at the table? What came up for you? Anything interesting? Any questions you had? Anything come up as you were having your conversations at your table? Were there some questions that were easier to answer than others? Okay. Were there some that were more difficult, obviously, than others? All right. Where did folks find the most difficulty? Number 4, which was what? What is it that people don't know about your culture, or what might surprise you? Okay. Number 2, which was the question about what? What do you like about being your race? Why might that be one of those questions that causes us to pause or have a hitch? Or we might have difficulties doing it? Yes. Because it might be embarrassing. What might be embarrassing?
Like, I put, and I'm white, I put that there's more opportunities.
All right, so she says she put that she's white, and then she said that there's more opportunities, and that's what she liked.
Well, right. It's a little embarrassing.
It's embarrassing to admit that. Right? So other people are shaking their heads too. It's embarrassing to admit that.
But is it a choice?
But is it a choice? Is what a choice?
The privilege that white people enjoy. I mean, did they say, I want this
a choice, it's a given.
I mean, because of the culture and what you talked about in our history, I didn't grow up knowing I was white any more than you knew you were black, but there's a certain thing that comes with it, and what you do, say I don't want to be white.
I don't know. I've never been white, so I don't know. But I get your point, right? So this white stuff, right? What does it mean? So I had a student. So I teach at Bethel. I teach Bethel University in the Twin Cities, and I teach education classes. So one of the students got really frustrated when we were having this conversation, and he said to me, he said, Andre, I feel like I'm the new oppressed group. I'm a white male. And it seems like everything is my fault. And I'm mad about it. He said, I can't get a good job because they have this affirmative action holdback. I can't, which is not true. He said, I can't get a scholarship because they have all these things for these minority groups. I'm mad. And guess what I said to him? You should be mad, but you're mad at the wrong person. You're mad at the wrong people. And so he said, well, who should I be mad at? I said, do you really want to know? He said, yeah. Who should I be mad at? I said, if I tell you it's going to change your world, are you sure you want to know? And he said, yeah, I want to know. And I said, okay, here it comes. You should be mad at your 8th grade soccer coach. He was like, what? I was like, yeah, 8th grade soccer coach. I said, because when you were in 8th grade, did everybody get a ribbon at the end of the season? He said, yeah, they did. I said, at the end of the season, did everybody get a trophy for something? He said, yeah, we did. I said, you know what they've done? They've tricked you. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, let's talk about this holdback stuff, right? This affirmative action stuff that people keep bellyaching about, that the people who are bellyaching about it now are going to need it in 15 years. They just can't see it because it's going to be necessary for them as demographic shift and change. And so I said, let's talk about this holdback. I said, what's the percentage? Are they holding back for these so-called minorities that you're talking about? I said, is it 100% of the workforce? He said, no, it's not 100. I said, is it 50% of the workforce? He said, no, it's not 50. I said, is it 25? He said, no, that's probably high. He said, it's probably around 10%. I said, so it's a 10% holdback. I said, with that 10% holdback, you should be angry. Because by giving everyone a trophy, what we've told people is that they're better than they are. And so his problem isn't with the 10%. His problem is because he can't compete with the 90%. And so instead of saying, I'm inadequate to compete with that 90%, then I'm going to look at this 10% and I'm going to blame my existence on them. And people do that with poor people all the time, right? Poor people are ruining the economy. They're wrecking the economy. They're siphoning wealth out of the economy. Well, I will tell you, guess who benefits the most from food stamps? Walmart. Of public employers, who do you think has the largest number of public employees or assistants? Walmart. So that concept of whiteness, what I was trying to get my student to understand was that the problems he was facing was because he is a white male and he is facing these things, but it's because the systems weren't even designed for him. The systems were designed for the owning class. So if you do exactly what the owning class do, anyone see The Great Gatsby? No matter what he did to rise above his situation, it was his pedigree that mattered more than even his money. So we have to pierce those illusions so that we can get to people's humanity, so we can restore people's humanity. And so what I did was I passed out some cards, and And if you have cards at your table and they say number 1, can you please can you stand if you're able? So we're going to do an experiment, and I want the rest of you to pay attention to what's going on in this experiment. And number 1, I want to say thank you so much for being brave enough to stand up and participate in this activity with us. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. You guys are absolutely fabulous and stellar. And the game is really simple. What I want you to do is I want you to, in that pack are some cards with numbers on those. And those numbers are the value of those cards. So, does everybody at least have 4 cards? You at least have 4? Okay, great. So I want you to tally up your totals, and I'll come back to you in just a second to give you more information. All right? So count up your cards, the value of those points on the cards. All right? And you can give us a rough estimate. You don't have to be an accountant. You can give us a rough estimate. All right? There should be some 2s. Do I have 2s? Can you guys stand up? 2s? All those who have 2 packets. There should be another table. There should be one more. Okay, we have the 2 tables. Now, I do want to say thank you for your participation in this activity. And what I'm going to need from you guys is to really focus on trying to accumulate more cards. Okay? And so count the number of cards. Does everyone have at least 4 cards? At least 4 cards, yes? Okay. And then we'll start a trading round. What we'll do in the trading round is we'll have you introduce yourself to someone. Once you've shaken their hands, you have to trade something. And you're trying to accumulate more points or more values. All right? Is that pretty clear to group? Is that pretty clear to group? Okay. All right, cool. All right, you can have a seat. Thank you so much. And there are some people who have 3s. Please stand up if you have 3s. If you're able to stand up. Well, I am so glad that you people could make it today. And I know you might have some difficulties understanding the process that we're engaged in. But I'm sure as you do your trading that you won't steal. Right? Can you promise me that you won't steal from other people? Can you do that for me? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I didn't hear everybody. All right, good. And what I want you to do is I also want you to be very polite when you interact with other people, okay? So we've practiced our manners before, and this is a great time to use them. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't hear everyone. Okay, cool. All right. Are there any questions that I can answer right now? I didn't think so. So thank you so much. Please stay. I didn't say sit down. Did you hear me say sit down? No, ma'am, you can sit down. So, and I'm going to need you guys to really focus on your area, okay? Because you've got a lot of work to do back there. We're going to help you, all right? So, one group, did you guys count your cards? All right, great. Does anybody need additional cards? Okay, cool. So you're good? All right, cool. 2 group, do you have your cards counted? All right, cool. The objective of the game is to do what? Get more cards. So you have to shake, once you shake hands with someone, you have to trade a card, right? In that 3 group, I forgot to ask, do you at least have 4 cards? No, you don't have 4 cards? Well, that's on you, because you should have came prepared, okay? You should have came prepared. All right, so what I'd like to do, we're going to do 3 rounds of this. The first round will be about a minute or so. The second round will be about 90 seconds. And then the third round will be a speed round. Okay? So, if you could begin trading. Actually, let me check my timer. If you can begin trading now. You have 1 minute for trading. Now, the rest of you, I want you to pay attention to what's going on. 30 seconds. Four, three, two, one, and go back to your area, please. I don't think I told the threes to sit down. Did I tell you to sit down, threes? And how dare you? I have a secretary, right? People don't just come up and talk to me. I have a secretary. Threes. I need you to understand that, okay? There are procedures and policies before you can talk to me. All right? Threes. All right, group two. Group two. Did anyone, are you counting your cards? So go ahead and count your cards. Go ahead and count your cards. So the rest of you, what did you start to notice as you watch this thing? I want you to count your cards, number group one. If you need more cards, let me know. The rest of you, what did you start to see or notice? Count your cards, three. Don't look at me. You got work to do. That's how you got in this situation in the first place. Watching TV. Maury Povich. See if he can get you out of this. So what did you start to notice? Audience members. What did you see? So ones didn't want their area. They didn't leave their area. Okay, stay their same area. What else? Okay, so treatment. So there's a difference in treatment happening. Okay, cool. All right, let's go back to our fish in the fish bowl. Group twos, did anyone increase? All right, please stand up. Did anyone decrease? You decreased? If you could stand up for me, please. Now your hand went down. Okay. All right. What is the name of the game? What are you supposed to be doing? You're supposed to be increasing your cards. So they obviously don't understand what the game is. Obviously. In group three, was there anyone that increased? You increased? Okay. And you increased in the back when you didn't have any cards before, but you increased. Go ahead, girl. You're working it. What I'd like you to do is I want you to trade cards and places with these twos who obviously don't know how to play the game. So please trade cards and places. Sister in the back, come on. What you mean you don't want to? I didn't ask you what you wanted. I don't want to. This is my system. All right, next round. Same thing, 30 seconds in this round. On your mark, get set, go. $15 seconds. Four, three, two, one, and go back to your areas. So threes, how did you do? Not good? No? Yeah? Don't worry, we kind of expected that from you. But just know that I do have another program I can put you in that will help give you some more tools that can help you become better. Okay? Group 2, how did you do? How'd you do? Group 2 is getting quiet. Good? You're good? Okay. You had your hand up earlier, sir.
I was just wondering why the fact that they have a number.
Oh, it's not important. I just needed an extra group member. So that's not important. Thank you, though, for asking. All right. Cool. Group 1, how are you guys doing? Doing really good? All right, cool. Are you finding it easy to trade? Okay. What was that? Now that you caught on? Okay. Okay. So, yeah, more points, or it may equal more cards, but it may also be more points. All right? Cool. I said we would do 3 rounds, but I think the lesson has been learned in this round. So, if you could, just put all your cards back in the packets. At a break, I'll have you just dump them off up here. For the rest of us, what did you notice? So some people are learning how to utilize my system. What else? So the people with the most cards and the most number weren't trading with anybody. All right. What else? Yes, in the back. People were being blamed for their lack of success. And it was the system that was messed up. I saw another hand over here. Yes. The way that the patience level, the way that I spoke to people, helped determine that stuff. Right? What else? Yes.
Group 3 didn't sit down the last time. Conditioning worked.
Group 3 didn't sit down the last time, and not only did they not sit down, they didn't try to sit down. Right? And they didn't leave their area. What else? Yes, ma'am.
The young woman who went up and approached you, who was brave and was thinking outside of the box, she was reprimanded.
Yes, So get back to where you belong. Now, I do want to tell you, I hope you understand I was play acting. So don't meet me in the hallway and body check me or something. So I was play acting. What is this a simulation of? What was this designed to kind of get us to think about?
Institutionalized inequality.
So institutionalized inequality. Right? What made the game work?
Cooperation with the group. Cooperation by the group. They didn't stand out after they found out it wasn't socially acceptable.
So they didn't step out when they found out it wasn't socially acceptable. What did the 2 group do?
You know what? We didn't say anything. You responded right here. We didn't say a word, did we?
What did the rest of you say as you were watching this unjust system play out in front of you? Nothing!
We're talking about ourselves here. I know.
You didn't know that you could make a difference. But who said that you couldn't? You just observed. You just watched. This plays out in our society all the time. We assume, and to be quite honest, cannot make anybody do anything. No, I'm just a dude in front of the room. I don't have any power or control over any of you. What made that game, that simulation successful was the audience's implicit silence in watching the game, and then the participants not rising up and saying, we're not going to play this stupid game. Yes, ma'am.
I watched how you treated or your attitude towards the individual group, and part of my hesitance to do anything, I didn't know what my number was. And I wasn't sure how you would respond.
What do the numbers mean?
Nothing.
Nothing. They mean nothing. There's no no winner, there's no loser. It's just a game created by me. And you all played along. What do you think would have happened if somebody, because I thought that a young lady in the back with the scarf, what's her name? Tanya. I thought Tanya was coming up here to protest. She actually did have a question. I thought she was going to say, I'm not playing this game. And I was waiting for at least somebody in the room to come up and say, this is wrong. We fight for, we fight for blah, blah, blah. But do we see how easy it is to fall into this trap that is set for us? And so when we think about this, when we think about what it means to be a particular race or a racial group, I want you to think about a stereotype about a group of people, a stereotype. You know those things that we don't like to talk about, or we hear other people talk about, and we go, ooh, don't say that, right? So I want you to think about that stereotype. These people are drunks. These people are thieves. These people are getting over on the system. I want you to think of one of those stereotypes. Now I want you to shake your family tree and see if any of those stereotypes fall out of your family tree. Whatever we can say about another group of people, we can say about our own group, and we can probably even say about our own family. We're more alike than we're different. And it's through these obstacle illusions that we think that we can't make a difference. And so what we understand is that poverty sucks. It sucks. Right? But it only sucks because we typically are implicit in our response to it. Can you imagine what it would be like if there was a foreclosed home in our neighborhood, and our neighbor said, you know what, I got $100. Let's get 200 people to give $100. We can save this house. Can you imagine what that might look like? Or we can say, you know what, we can't get the house, but we can get the land. So let's do a land trust for our neighborhood group. So we'll do a land trust, and then you can buy the house, and blah, blah, blah. Many of our CAP programs, that's part of what we aim to do, right? To get people into affordable houses that they can afford. Because they might not be able to afford the land, but they can afford the house. And so it's up to us to speak out and to do something. Right? I'm in a grocery store, and I tell this story not because I want you to do this, but it's an example of how, as individuals, we can shape the world. We can rock the world. So I'm in a grocery store. No, actually, it starts at the dollar store. So there's a young couple, and their race isn't important, but it adds a little color to the story. So they're an African-American couple with a little baby, and they're under 20. Right? So they're under 20. Whether they're married or not, I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but they have this little baby. And so the woman pulls out of her basket an apple juice at the dollar store. So she puts it on the counter, and something captures the young man's attention. So he's looking at some shiny thing, and so she takes out her EBT card, and she's in mid-swipe. And all of a sudden, the dude turns around, and he says, "You stupid, boo, you are so boo, 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 and boo, 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 boo." And so he's just going off on this lady. And he's getting puffed up, and the more he curses, he gets puffed up. And guess how she responds to this? She doesn't. Which lets me know that this isn't the first time this has probably happened. And so, like everybody else in the store, I say the same thing to myself that everybody else is saying. And what are they saying? None of my business. So we're all looking at prices at the dollar store. Like, how much is this car? Right? So everybody's looking at this different stuff. And then this always happens to me. I don't know why it happens to me, but the voice speaks. And I'm like, ugh. And the voice said, say something. And I'm like, no. And the voice said, speak. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to say. And by this time, I'm having this conversation with the voice, and they've just exited the store. And I'm like, oh, they're gone. And the voice says, say something. And I said, okay, voice, I'll make you a deal. If they're still in the parking lot, when I'm done with my transaction, I will go say something. And so I'm standing there, and I'm taking my time. And the cashier is like, will you come on? And I'm like, And so I finally finished the thing, and they're out in the parking lot. But the guy just takes a phone call. So he's on the phone, and he's still rah, 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 rah. And I said, okay, boys, I will say something if he gets off the phone before I get to my car. Right? And so I'm trying to walk casually, but trying not to look at him And so I don't make it to the car, and they're now going into a grocery store. So I follow behind them in the grocery store. Now, I will tell you, I am smart enough to know that you don't walk behind somebody, tap them on the shoulder and say, I want to talk to you. Right? So I go around an aisle, and I meet them face to face. And I see the young man. Now, I find it very surprising that the voice had all this encouragement until I'm face to face with this dude. And now the voice is being silent. So I don't know what to say. I've never been in a position like this before. I do know that if I say the wrong thing, this lady is going to catch hell when she gets home. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to do, okay, so I don't know what to say. And so the voice is quiet. So now I'm stalling till the voice, kicks in. And so I say to the young man, sir, can I talk to you for a second? And he's like, what? About what? And I'm like, it's all good. I put my ears down. I tuck my tail a little bit. So I'm trying to show him I'm non-threatening. And so I said, sir, if we could just take a step over here and we can have a conversation. And so we take 2 steps to the side, and which is the social cue for the mom and the baby to go a little further. So we have some private public space. And so we're standing there, and I've stalled as much as I possibly can. I'm getting nothing. And then the voice says, open your mouth. And I'm like, okay. So I opened my mouth and I said, sir, can I share something with you about women? If you want her to grow, you have to give her sunshine and you have to give her water. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no idea what that means. And so I repeat it. I don't repeat it for him, I repeat it for me. And so I said, sir, if you want her to grow, you have to give her sunshine and you have to water her. Do you know what I mean? He deflates. His prickles go away. And he looks at me and he says, yeah, I do. All right, sir, great job. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later. I did what I was supposed to do. I'm out of here. I'm not trying to sell you Amway. I don't want to make you a part of my multi-level marketing scheme. I'm out of here, right? And so I leave. And it took me a couple of weeks to figure out why I was compelled to speak on that particular day in that particular moment. And I know that all of you are way smarter than I am, and maybe you picked up on it a little faster than I did. But why do you think I was compelled to speak? Just to calm him down. Why else might I have been empowered to speak?
Protect her.
To protect her.
Their child. The way you were raised.
It was the way I was raised.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. When I figured this out, it really changed how I interact with the world. It changed how I think about my relationships to other people. And the reason that I did it was because there was a small child involved. You see, long gone are the days where we give a man a fish and he eats for what? A day. Long gone are the days where we teach a man a fish and he eats for a lifetime. We're now at a point where we need to start teaching generations how to manage lakes and streams. And so sometimes we forget as practitioners that when we're helping an individual, we can actually be breaking generational curses off their lives. People often ask, why are poor people poor? Have you ever heard people ask that question? Well, I flip the question around. Why are rich people rich? And why are they rich?
Because they were born that way.
Because they were born that way and they were taught by rich people how to be rich. Who teaches poor people how to be poor? Other poor people. And so when we start thinking about this, we have to recognize that we have an individual responsibility to speak up. I was in another grocery store at another situation. I don't know why these things happen in grocery stores. I don't know what that's about. But I'm in the grocery store, and there's a woman in front of me, and then there's a woman in front of her. And the woman in front of her has a basket full of groceries, and she's wearing a hijab. So I can only imagine that she is Muslim or Somali or an Arab in some way. And she's got 5 kids. And her English isn't that great. So she's trying to negotiate these 5 kids in the candy aisle with a cart full of groceries. Right? And so she's going back and forth with the lady. And the lady in front of me is acting what my grandmother would call acting a fool. And she's doing this. I wish these people would. She's doing all this murmuring and stuff. And they're so she's doing all this stuff. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, oh, I got this. I know what this is. I do this on a day-to-day basis. I got my PowerPoint in the car. I got some handouts. I said, I can make this work. Right? So I'm standing there and I'm thinking that's not real logical. So I go back to my teaching and I do something that I know works. I know that people don't like being watched, even though they want to be on America's Next Top Model and all these different shows. But nobody likes being watched. So I stand there and I go, what happens to the woman's behavior? It stops. It stops. I didn't have any big signs or protests. I didn't make a big situation out of it. But when she was able to recognize that people heard her and saw her, she decided to change her behavior. Now, did I change her behavior for the rest of her life? I don't know. But in that moment, I stood up and I said something that caused some cognitive dissonance for her. I did that. I'm in a bar restaurant, and it's 10:30 on a Saturday morning. I go in to grab my lunch. I had a bunch of errands to run, and there's a guy that's already in the bar, and he's red-faced and drunk, sitting at the end of the bar. I close my menu. The dude moves from the end of the bar and sits right next to me, and he says, "You know what? I don't like niggers." Now, I'm thinking that's one heck of an introduction. I don't know where do you go from there with that, right? And so I'm standing there, and I'm sitting there, and so I do what any good Minnesotan would do, which is what? Change the subject, right? So we start talking about other stuff, and so I come back to this. Something in my spirit said, go back to that. So I said, sir, when you use that word, what are you talking about? He said, I'm talking about ignorance. I'm talking about people who don't know how to act. I'm talking about people who don't talk right. People who like rap. So he goes through all this list. And then I asked him, I said, sir, do you know any white people who fit that description? And he said, yeah. I said, how about those Vikings? And so we started talking about the Vikings and all this kind of stuff. And then he leaned over to me and he said, you know what? I don't like niggers, but I like you. Now, I'm not quite sure what to do with that either. It sounded kind of like a compliment, but I wasn't that sure, right? So I say that. I say to him, well, sir, what do you like about me? What makes me unique or different? And he said, well, you have a good head on your shoulders. You're educated. You can communicate well, and blah, 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 blah. And so I said, well, sir, what if all the people that you met that you think look like me, all the ones that you met that you think look like me were idiots, and everybody else that you haven't met that you think looks like me is just like me? And he looks at me and he says, I gotta pee. So he gets up and he goes off into the bathroom. And so now I'm feeling pretty good because I haven't had to, fight or any big confrontation or whatnot. And so I get my stuff and I'm headed out the door. And guess who meets me at the door? It's this guy, right? And he has a dim napkin, and he looks at me with his dim napkin, and he says, I raise chickens. If you ever need fresh eggs, give me a call. And he hands me the napkin. I take the napkin. I go my way. He goes his way. I didn't call him. But what happened for him? attitude. What was that?
I said, I think that was his apology.
That might have been his apology to me. Would you have understood if I had given that dude a piece of my mind for calling me a nasty name like that? Would you have understood if I went off on him and said, you kid, what's wrong with you? Would you have understood if I did that? Yeah. But had I done that, I would have done what? I would have reinforced everything that he thought about people who he thinks look like me. And so when we start talking about how do we move, how do we change things, how do we stand up in the face of all of this stuff, how do we do it? Well, one of the things we have to do is recognize people's humanity. Sometimes we want to be right and we don't do the right thing. Has anyone ever heard someone say, well, don't be a doormat? Has everyone ever heard somebody say that? Right? What do they mean by that? Don't let people walk over you. Please raise your hand if you have a doormat in front of your house right now. Doormats serve a purpose. They serve a purpose. And what is that purpose?
Wipe your feet off.
So part of the transition, right? So you wipe your feet so once you get past that doormat, you're clean as you go to your next stage. And so sometimes people need to get that stuff off on us so that they can go past us with a clean conscience or with a new way of being. And what do we do when our doormats get too dirty? We shake them out and we put them right back where they go. Right? And so sometimes we don't want to be a doormat so much that we don't give the opportunity for somebody to get their stuff off before they go past us. So there are three concepts I'm going to leave you with. Before that, there's a chart that's in your handout. And the chart talks about barriers to humanity. And across the top of this chart are categories. African American, European American, Latino American, Asian American, Disabled American, and Native Americans. And what I'd like for you to do is to tell me what the groups on the left taught you about the groups going across the top. And the way that I want you to do this is I want you to put a plus if they taught you something positive. I want you to put a minus if they taught you something negative. And I want you to put a 0 if you never had a conversation about that at all. You can have pluses and minuses in the same box, but the size of your plus or the size of your minus will dictate how much you learn. So a big plus means you learned a lot of positive, and a little minus means you learned a lot of negative, or a little bit of negative. All right? So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to do that. You may begin now. All right, stop right where you are. What I'd like for you to do is have a conversation at your table about the pluses, the minuses, and the zeros. All right?
Three, two, one.
So as you were having conversations at your table, were there some themes that came up as a part of that conversation? Were there some stuff that you noted either about yourself or your upbringing that you think might be good for the whole? Anyone?
I think the environment that you grew up in shapes you a great deal.
Do you think that the environment that you grow up in shapes you? Definitely. Definitely. Other folks?
We mentioned how we would have changed over time. Such movies have changed, school environments changed.
So you talked about how things have changed over
Yeah,
time.
for instance, when
So just in terms of generations, things have changed between generations. Okay. Someone else. Yes.
I was raised that everybody was the same. There was no positive or negative. People were people. And so I learned prejudice in the world after I left home. Not personal prejudice, but observed those of others and experienced some.
Okay. So you learned a prejudice outside of the home from your experience with other people.
Other people.
Okay.
Not, like I said, not my own, but I guess because I didn't have any exposure to this at home, I was surprised when groups would be upset with me. Or have an attitude, I guess, to use your word, based on who I was.
Okay. So you were surprised by that.
I was surprised by that.
Okay. Cool. Other folks. Yes.
Okay, what does that mean? I mean, I know what it means a little bit, but can you explain to me what do you mean when someone comes up and said your background shapes you? What does that mean as a whole?
Okay. So the question was, what does it mean when someone says that your background shapes you? So we live. Where do we live? What state do we live in? Minnesota. Where is Minnesota? In the upper Midwest of what? The United States of America. The United States of America is where? Is in North America. And North America is in what hemisphere? The West Hemisphere. Right? The West Hemisphere is connected to the East Hemisphere, and both hemispheres are on what? On Earth. Yes.
There are people here who are deaf who need to read your lips.
Okay.
And they need to see your mouth.
All right, great. I was trying to use more of the microphone to do that. So, all right, good. At least somebody wants to look at me. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, North America, Minnesota, United States are all a context. We do things here in Minnesota that they don't do in Florida. Right? Somebody said shovel. Right? So our environment shapes our behavior. So when they say that, that's what she's referring to. That the environment you grow up in shapes your behavior. And so because we grow up in Minnesota, the snowmobiling is big, winter sports are big because we have winter for 7 months. Right? And so that's what she's talking about. So how does that translate to everyday life, right? So if I grow up in a rural community, I know about rural stuff. So in Ohio, where I grew up, we had this thing called cow tipping. Where we would sneak up on cows and knock them over. And sometimes we'd kill them because they'd have a heart attack. Right? That was the wise tale. Right? And so your environment dictates your behavior. And that becomes your cultural context. So that as contexts change, so do the way that we're supposed to interact. Why is it that we do not have dinosaurs today? Because they could not, what's that?
They didn't adapt.
They could not adapt to the new context. Which is why I'm so glad that, sometimes people need to die. Sometimes it's the only way to get rid of that stuff. You have to die, right? So, for example, there are people who call Brazil nuts by another name. Oh, I got the hush. And you're like, yeah. Right? So, for those people who don't know, Brazil nuts are these orange wedge-looking nuts, and they're wooden. I mean, the shell is like wood, and they're dark brown, and they were referred to as nigger toes. Is another way that they're talked about, and so is that acceptable to say now? No, it's not. Right? But we may have relatives who still call it that. And so how do we deal with that? How do we address that? If I said, Grandpa, you can't say that. What's their pushback going to be? That's what we call it. That's what I'm going to call it. You can't tell me what to do, little whippersnapper. Before you were born, I was right. So they just go off on that stuff. And so context becomes important. It was acceptable then, but it's not acceptable now. So how do we get those people to come to the now? And I'll talk about that in just a second. One of the things I do want to leave you with this particular activity, if there are things that you don't know about, or things that people tried to teach you that were negative things, or maybe positive things, I just want to tell you, it is not your fault what you know or what you don't know. That's not your fault in terms of what people tried to teach you or what your limited context had to offer you. It's not your fault. But how many people have driven or ridden in a car? Does that automobile have a blind spot? And typically, where is that blind spot? Sometimes it's right behind you, on the side. Sometimes it's in front of you. And if you drive a Hummer, the whole thing is a blind spot. Is that blind spot your fault? No, it's not your fault. But when you get in that rental car, and you sign for that car, you say, I am responsible for everything I can see and everything that I can't see in that car. So although the blind spot is not your fault, it is your responsibility to do something about it. And so whatever it is on that paper that you know or you don't know, or misinformation that people have given you, or lack of exposure your context has given you, it's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to make sure that you fill in those gaps, that you stand up for somebody, that you love people. Three concepts I'm going to leave you with. One is bigotry. And bigotry is one of these classic kind of concepts that we attribute particularly to an American character named Archie Bunker. And most of you are not old enough to have watched that on television, but Archie Bunker was this kind of blue-collar, cranky, old white guy who didn't like anybody that wasn't like him. And when he meant anybody that wasn't like him, he meant anybody that wasn't sitting in his chair. So anybody who wasn't sitting in his chair, he didn't particularly care for. He was opinionated. Oftentimes he was wrong. And what I've been told about bigots is that they are ignorant. Has anyone ever heard that? Someone say, well, bigots are ignorant. And so when I've interacted with a bigot, what I've done is I've brought information. And I say, bigot, you're wrong. Here's some data. Bigot, you're wrong. Here's some statistics. Bigot, you're wrong. Here's some more information. And the more information I bring, the more they dig in, and the more they dig in, so they finally get tired of my information, and then they tell me what's wrong with them. And they say, Andre, I don't care what you say, this is how I feel. Oh, that's what bigotry is. Bigotry is an emotion. Does data change emotions? So you have a sad friend, a friend with the blues. I'm not talking about clinical depression, just the blues. You know, we get it sometimes, right? What do you do to bring that friend out of the blues? You help them feel better by doing what? What do? You make them laugh. So you tell them a joke. What do? You hang out with them. You go shopping, you buy some chocolate, you go bungee jumping, skydiving, you do something that takes them out of it. And if you gave all of those things in sum total, I would say that you love them out of that sadness. And so emotions move emotions. Information doesn't move emotions. So how do we move a bigot? You love them. I'm not saying you take their stuff. You don't take stuff from people you don't have to take. But what I am saying is you say, particularly if it's a person in your family or someone in your circle of influence, you say what? You say a bigoted person, I'm not going to let you go. I have some some boundaries. Don't cross those boundaries, but I'm going to continually be tethered to you. Because do bigoted people get better once you cut them off? No, they get sicker. As a matter of fact, they go find another group of sick people and then they start breeding. And then you get a whole new sect of crazy. The second concept that we're leaving with is prejudice. And I was always taught that prejudice was good. I have found out as an adult that prejudice will save your life. So I'm walking down the street. It's 11:30 at night. There are 6 guys coming towards me. What decision do I make? I cross the street. Why? Because I'm prejudiced. I have prejudged the situation. And you would say that's what kind of a decision? A wise or a smart decision. But now I take that same decision and I'm at a grocery store. And there are 6 people coming down the aisle towards me. What decision do I make using my learnings from the street? I go down another aisle. But when I go down that aisle, what do I see? 6 more people. So what made sense in that context no longer makes sense in this new context. And so what prejudiced people do is they take something that made sense out in that context and try to apply it as a strategy for living in another context. An example, you'll hear people say, well, I know 5 Native Americans, and they were drunks, so all Native Americans are drunk. That's problematic. The logic is bad. Right? And what makes the logic bad in that? It's a stereotype. What else? Not everybody's the same. So I'm taking these 5 and I'm giving the word all. So anytime you hear someone say A-L-L, you know it's a problem. Right? So I'm saying this whole group is just like these 5 people. But here's the other part that's really problematic about the logic. My granddaddy used to say, birds of a feather flock together. So I'm concerned. If you know 5 drunk anything, because why do you know all the drunks? Why is that? So how do you change? So prejudice is a thought. It's a set of thoughts. So prejudice is a thought. How do you change a thought? How do you engage a thought? Anybody have teenagers? When's the best time to talk to a teenager? In the car. And I stopped talking to teenagers. I don't talk to teenagers anymore. I don't even talk to them. I don't say anything to them. Well, I say stuff to them, but I don't talk to them. Because they don't want to talk. They want to text. And they don't want to text me. But this is what I do to teenagers, and they can't stop it. It drives them crazy. I ask questions. Why is it? I'm sure you've seen these law shows, right? So you have these lawyers, these highfalutin lawyers, and they're in the courtroom. And this lawyer knows that everybody's not going to take this question. It's not going to go over. It's not going to fly. But the attorney stands in front of the jury and says, "Jury, I want to ask this question." And then the defense says, I want to strike that. And the judge says, sustain. And then they say, the attorney says, I'll take it back. I'll withdraw that question. Why does the attorney withdraw a question that he knows is going to be refuted by the other side? Why does he still ask the question? Because once you put the question out, you can't take it back. And so when I'm interacting with prejudiced people, I ask a lot of questions. So they say, well, these people, so where did you read that? Is that true about all of them? Can I find that article? Can you show me where that is? What's happening with that? Really? Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Have you ever thought about this? And once you start doing that, what does the prejudiced person start doing? Like, oh, that's too much. Don't make me think. And lastly is this concept of discrimination. And discrimination is a behavior. And who said that they would take care of discrimination? Whose responsibility is it to take care of discrimination? I'm walking down the hall and one of my coworkers swats me and grabs my bottom. And we're not on the softball team together. Who do I see? I'm at work. This is grab and squeeze. Who do I report that to? HR, Human Resources. And if I don't get satisfaction there, I take it to the courts. And the only people who can give me satisfaction in that stuff would be the legal process. And so the law, the government says, we will take care of discrimination. Is there a law that says how people can think? No, there is no law that says how people can think. Is there a law that says how people, what emotions people can have? There is no law that says what emotions people can have. Is there a law that says how people can act? Yes, there is. And so if the government says that they will take care of discrimination, and they wrote a law about it in 1964, it's obvious that we have no more discrimination. Yay! Do we have discrimination today? Can you tell me why?
They haven't changed people's attitudes.
We haven't changed people's thoughts and their emotions. And whose responsibility is that? Ours. If you haven't got anything from the crazy ride that we've taken this morning, what I do want you to take from this is that it's important that we recognize other people's humanity, because there is dignity and honor in being human. Dignity is something that you have and something that you give to someone else. Honor is the highest level of respect that we reserve for people who have done things for us that we could not necessarily do for ourselves. Being, please raise your hand if you passed a test or you purchased a ticket that made you eligible to be born. None of us did anything to bring ourselves here. We're all trying to figure out what it means to be human. And there are three things about humanity that I'd like to share with you as I close. One is that my humanity can only be humanity when I am in authentic relationships with another human. It's questionable if I'm human on a deserted island all by myself. I was waiting for this song to come on a long time ago. Right? So that's questionable. What else is questionable is life you can't go on. That's my favorite song too. All your money is gone. And it feels like there's a illusion. Okay. So humanity. So my humanity can only be expressed when I'm in direct, authentic relationship with other human beings, and when I am in the service of those human beings, and not just primarily in the service of myself. So when I'm in the service of human beings, my humanity gets magnified, and my humanity gets recognized when I'm in relationships with other people. The other thing about humanity, the third thing about humanity that I want you to walk away from, is that no matter what race, creed, color, socioeconomic status, gender expression, you are always, 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 always human. My name is Koen. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Awesome. We're going to dismiss, starting in the front, and just go zigzag around for lunch. Lunch is ready. We have a poem that Koen is going